When Dale Carnegie first set out to write about the art of human relationships, he didn't base his ideas on theories alone. He gathered them from countless real-life stories, practical experiences, and the timeless wisdom of people who had learned the subtle skills of winning cooperation, respect, and affection. His work begins with a simple but profound truth. Dealing with people successfully is one of the most important skills any human being can develop. Technical knowledge or talent might get you started, but it is your ability to interact with others, to make them feel valued, understood, and respected, that determines how far you will go in life, whether in business, friendships, or family relationships. Carnegie emphasizes that the principles he lays out are not manipulative tricks. They are rooted in genuine interest in others and sincere appreciation for their qualities. People respond not to cold calculation but to authentic warmth, and this is the thread that runs through every page of his book. From the very start, Carnegie points out that the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to feel important. Every person we meet carries within them a longing to be appreciated, to have their worth recognized, to be treated as if their opinions and presence matter. If we can satisfy this longing honestly, we win their goodwill. If we ignore it, we sow resentment and resistance. This understanding forms the foundation of every interaction. People do not usually change because we criticize them. In fact, criticism almost always puts them on the defensive. When someone feels attacked, they are more likely to justify themselves, blame others, or simply shut down. Carnegie illustrates this with stories of managers, parents, and even famous leaders who discovered that criticism rarely improves behavior. Instead, he recommends the opposite approach. Find something to praise sincerely and focus on that. Then gently lead the other person toward the behavior you want to encourage. Carnegie believed that arguments, even when won, are usually lost in reality. You might succeed in proving someone wrong, but you rarely convince them to genuinely change their mind. More often, they feel humiliated, and their pride demands they hold to their position even more stubbornly. The wiser path is to avoid arguments altogether when possible, and instead find areas of agreement to build upon. He describes situations in which people defused potential conflicts simply by acknowledging the other person's perspective, even if they did not fully agree. By starting from a place of agreement, you create a shared foundation from which understanding can grow. People are much more open to new ideas when they feel their dignity is intact. One of the recurring themes in Carnegie's work is the power of listening. Most people, he observed, are so concerned with expressing their own thoughts that they fail to truly hear what others are saying. Yet, listening attentively is one of the simplest and most effective ways to make someone feel valued. When you listen, not just with your ears but with your whole attention, you send a message. What you have to say matters to me. This kind of listening builds trust and rapport almost instantly. Carnegie shares stories of businesspeople who turned prospects into lifelong clients simply by allowing them to talk about themselves, their needs, and their dreams without interruption. This principle applies equally in personal life. A friend or spouse who feels genuinely heard is far more likely to feel loved and supported. Another powerful lesson in the book is the importance of remembering and using people's names. A person's name, Carnegie writes, is to that person the sweetest sound in any language. When you use someone's name in conversation, it personalizes the interaction and acknowledges their individuality. This is not about forced repetition or mechanical memory tricks. It's about caring enough to remember and use a detail that is deeply personal to them. He recounts how politicians, business leaders, and even ordinary people were able to open doors simply by addressing others by name and recalling small but meaningful details about them. This simple habit can turn a routine exchange into a warm, human connection. Carnegie also emphasizes that to truly win people over, you must talk in terms of their interests, not just your own. People are naturally more engaged when a conversation touches on subjects they care about. Whether you are negotiating a business deal, making a request, or simply trying to build a friendship, framing the discussion in a way that shows how it benefits the other person is far more persuasive than focusing solely on your needs. This principle is illustrated through examples of successful salespeople, diplomats, and leaders who were masters at aligning their goals with the priorities of others. They didn't pretend to care. They genuinely took the time to understand the other side's motivations. Underlying all of these strategies is a mindset of making the other person feel important, and doing so sincerely. Flattery can be spotted and dismissed instantly, but honest appreciation has a lasting impact. Carnegie warns that this is not about telling people they are wonderful when you don't mean it. It's about training yourself to notice their good qualities and acknowledging them openly. Even small acts of recognition can inspire loyalty and goodwill. In workplaces, this means praising employees not only for big achievements but also for the effort, creativity, or cooperation they show along the way. In personal life, it means expressing gratitude for the small ways people enrich your days. These early principles set the stage for Carnegie's deeper lessons about leadership and influence. He shows that the best way to get someone to do something is not to give orders, but to inspire them to want to do it themselves. People resist being told what to do, but they will work enthusiastically for their own ideas. Leaders who involve others in decision-making, who ask for input and suggestions rather than dictating, create a sense of ownership and pride in the work. Carnegie offers stories of managers who turned underperforming teams into highly motivated groups simply by inviting them to solve problems together, and then giving credit for their solutions. A related idea is to allow others to save face. If you must correct someone or point out a mistake, doing it in a way that preserves their dignity is essential. Humiliating someone, even unintentionally, can damage a relationship beyond repair. Carnegie suggests subtle methods. Talk about your own mistakes first, phrase feedback as a suggestion rather than a command, and recognize the person's strengths before discussing areas for improvement. When people feel respected, they are far more open to change. Carnegie also understood the power of encouragement. When you encourage someone, you give them the confidence to improve and grow. This is especially important when someone is learning something new or trying to overcome a failure. By making even small achievements seem significant, you help build momentum. He gives examples of teachers who transformed struggling students into high achievers simply by believing in them and celebrating progress, however small. In business, this same principle can help develop employees' skills and foster loyalty. As the book unfolds, Carnegie weaves these principles into a philosophy of life that extends beyond business and into personal fulfillment. Treating others with respect, kindness, and genuine interest not only makes them more likely to respond positively, but also enriches your own experience. People who practice these habits find themselves surrounded by goodwill, opportunities, and friendships. They also develop greater empathy and emotional intelligence, which are valuable in every area of life. By the time Carnegie concludes, the reader is left with the sense that influence is not about clever persuasion techniques or manipulating others to get what you want. It is about building real connections, rooted in understanding and appreciation. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to uplift someone, to recognize their worth, and to create an atmosphere where cooperation comes naturally. The power to win friends and influence people is not something reserved for the naturally charming. It is a skill anyone can learn, provided they are willing to approach others with sincerity and respect. Carnegie often returned to the truth that people are more easily led than driven. He illustrates this with the story of Charles Schwab, a highly successful industrialist who built his leadership style on encouragement rather than criticism. Schwab explained that his secret was to be hearty in his approval and lavish in his praise, always looking for things people were doing right and reinforcing them. Instead of punishing mistakes harshly, he would look for ways to guide improvement while keeping the person's confidence intact. This approach did not make him appear soft or indecisive. Rather, it inspired loyalty and motivated his employees to perform better, because they wanted to live up to his faith in them. Carnegie uses examples like this to show that leadership grounded in respect and appreciation creates far more lasting results than authority enforced by fear. One of the most vivid techniques Carnegie discusses is beginning with praise before delivering any form of constructive criticism. When you open by recognizing someone's strengths, you make it clear that you value them, which softens the impact of the feedback that follows. This method reduces defensiveness and keeps the conversation productive. For example, if a colleague has made an error in a report, starting with, "I really appreciate the thorough research you've done here. It's clear you put a lot of effort into it," creates a positive atmosphere before suggesting corrections. Carnegie points out that this isn't about sugarcoating reality, but about preserving the other person's sense of worth, which is crucial if you want them to act on your suggestions without resentment. Another idea he promotes is to call attention to people's mistakes indirectly, rather than bluntly saying, "You're wrong," or "You did this badly." It's often more effective to ask questions or make observations that lead them to realize the mistake on their own. This allows them to correct themselves without feeling publicly shamed. Carnegie tells stories of managers who, instead of issuing direct orders, would frame their requests as questions. "Do you think this section might work better if we?" Or, "What would happen if we tried it this way?" These questions guide people toward the right action, while making them feel part of the decision-making process. Carnegie also encourages leaders to speak about their own mistakes before criticizing others. By admitting your own shortcomings, you demonstrate humility and make it clear that you're not placing yourself above the other person. This builds trust and shows that errors are part of being human. A boss who says, "I've made similar mistakes myself," is more likely to be met with cooperation than one who acts as if they never err. This approach also helps create a culture where people feel safe to admit mistakes and learn from them rather than hiding them out of fear. The principle of asking questions instead of giving direct orders is closely tied to the idea of giving people ownership of their work. When individuals feel that the solution is their idea, they become more committed to making it succeed. Carnegie shares examples from both business and politics where leaders skillfully guided conversations so that others came up with the desired plan themselves. This approach transforms compliance into enthusiasm, which is far more powerful. Another element of his method is allowing people to save face, especially in moments of failure or embarrassment. Publicly correcting someone, or drawing attention to their errors in front of others can leave lasting bitterness. Carnegie urges the reader to handle such situations privately and tactfully, making sure the person's dignity is preserved. He recounts instances where a small gesture, like quietly fixing a mistake without calling attention to it, helped maintain a strong working relationship. Carnegie knew that expecting perfection from others was unrealistic, and so he advocates praising even the slightest improvement. This doesn't mean lowering standards but recognizing effort and progress, no matter how incremental. Positive reinforcement builds momentum. When people feel their efforts are noticed, they are more likely to keep improving. He tells of teachers who turned failing students around by finding something, anything, they could honestly commend, which gradually built the students' confidence and led to better performance. One of the more subtle but powerful tools he describes is giving someone a reputation to live up to. By expressing faith in someone's abilities and describing them in positive terms, you encourage them to act in ways that justify that reputation. If you tell an employee, "You've always been so reliable with deadlines," they will be more inclined to meet the next one to maintain that image. Carnegie shows how leaders have used this to inspire higher standards without ever issuing a command. Encouragement also plays a role in making tasks seem easy to achieve. By breaking challenges into manageable steps and expressing confidence in the person's ability to handle them, you help remove fear and resistance. People often fail to start simply because they feel overwhelmed, but when you make the first step seem simple, they are more likely to take action. Carnegie cites stories of sales managers who train nervous recruits by starting them on small, achievable goals, building their confidence until they were ready for larger challenges. Another principle he stresses is making the other person happy about doing what you suggest. This is not manipulation but aligning your requests with their own interests and values. If you can show how the action benefits them, their team, or their reputation, they will approach the task with energy rather than reluctance. Carnegie gives examples of managers who framed assignments not as burdens, but as opportunities for growth or recognition, and the difference in the outcome was remarkable. These ideas flow into Carnegie's larger philosophy about influence, which is that you cannot force genuine cooperation. You can only invite it by making people feel respected, valued, and understood. Whether you are trying to lead a team, resolve a conflict, or simply get along better with neighbors and family members, the same principles apply. Avoid direct confrontation. Focus on the other person's perspective, acknowledge their importance, and build trust through sincerity. By embedding these practices into daily life, relationships become less about winning and losing, and more about creating mutual benefit. Carnegie's principles are not quick tricks to get your way in the moment. They are long-term habits that build a reputation for fairness, kindness, and reliability. Over time, such a reputation becomes your greatest asset, opening doors and smoothing paths that force or authority never could. Carnegie reinforces his principles with stories of remarkable individuals who achieved influence not through domination, but through the gentle art of understanding and cooperation. One example he shares is that of Abraham Lincoln, who early in his career had a reputation for being sharp-tongued and quick to criticize. After a few painful experiences, including nearly provoking a duel through a public insult, Lincoln consciously changed his approach, becoming one of the most tactful leaders in American history. During the Civil War, even when dealing with generals who disappointed him, Lincoln would write letters expressing his frustration, but would often never send them, recognizing that venting his anger would do little to inspire better performance. Instead, he focused on encouragement, diplomacy, and finding common ground, knowing that winning the war required keeping people united rather than alienated. Carnegie often uses business examples to illustrate how these ideas work in competitive environments. He tells of a department store manager who faced a customer demanding a refund for shoes clearly worn and damaged through misuse. The sales clerk argued the case, pointing out that the policy did not allow such a return. The customer became angry, and the situation was heading toward a shouting match. The manager stepped in, listened attentively, and instead of defending the policy, expressed regret that the customer was dissatisfied. He issued the refund cheerfully, saying the store's reputation for fairness was worth more than the price of the shoes. Not only did the customer leave happy, but she returned to shop again and brought friends. The cost of the shoes was small compared to the long-term goodwill gained. Carnegie uses such stories to demonstrate that flexibility and generosity often pay off far more than rigidly sticking to rules. One of the recurring messages in Carnegie's work is that most people are guided more by emotion than logic, and appealing to their emotions is often the most effective way to influence them. Facts alone rarely change minds. People need to feel understood before they will be open to your reasoning. He recounts how President Franklin D. Roosevelt was known for his ability to connect with people on a personal level, often remembering small details about their families or interests. This personal touch created a sense of trust and warmth, making people more receptive to his ideas. Roosevelt's fireside chats over the radio are another example. He spoke in a friendly, conversational tone, addressing the fears and hopes of ordinary Americans during the Great Depression. He wasn't just delivering policies, he was making people feel that he was on their side. Carnegie also draws from his own experiences teaching public speaking and human relations. He recalls how many students came into his classes worried about how to impress others with their intelligence or skill. Over time, they learned that the surest way to impress people is to show interest in them instead. One shy participant transformed his career by simply making a habit of asking colleagues about their projects, listening carefully, and offering genuine compliments. Within months, he had built strong relationships throughout his company, not because he was the most technically skilled employee, but because he made others feel valued. The book is filled with subtle but profound observations about human behavior. For instance, Carnegie notes that people are often more interested in talking about themselves than in hearing about others, which presents an opportunity for anyone willing to listen attentively. A simple, "Tell me more about that" can open up conversations, create bonds, and reveal shared interests that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. This approach can be surprisingly powerful in negotiations, where allowing the other side to explain their position fully often reveals the path to a mutually satisfying agreement. Carnegie doesn't limit these lessons to professional life. He applies them to personal relationships as well. In marriage, friendship, and family life, the same principles hold true. A spouse who feels appreciated and listened to is far more likely to respond with affection and cooperation. Parents who encourage rather than criticize are more likely to raise confident, independent children. He describes a father who, instead of scolding his son for failing to make the school baseball team, praised the effort and offered to practice with him so he could improve for next year. That encouragement not only strengthened their bond, but also motivated the boy to keep trying rather than give up in embarrassment. Another compelling theme in Carnegie's writing is the importance of adapting your approach to each individual. What inspires one person may not move another. A good leader or communicator takes the time to understand the personality, values, and motivations of the person they are dealing with. Carnegie shares an example of a sales representative who struggled to win over a particular client until he discovered the client's passion for sailing. By talking about sailing and showing genuine interest, the representative broke down the client's resistance, leading to a deal that had previously seemed impossible. The key was not clever salesmanship, but genuine curiosity and respect for the client's world. As the narrative progresses, Carnegie subtly makes the point that these skills are not innate talents possessed only by the naturally charming. They can be learned and practiced by anyone. He encourages the reader to start small, smile more often, remember and use names, ask questions, listen without interrupting, offer sincere compliments. Over time, these small habits become second nature, transforming not only how others see you but also how you see them. People who adopt these practices often find that their own outlook becomes more positive, as they train themselves to look for the best in others rather than the worst. By weaving together historical anecdotes, business case studies, and personal experiences, Carnegie creates a tapestry of wisdom that feels as relevant today as when the book was first published. The core of his message is timeless. If you want others to like you, agree with you, or work with you, start by genuinely liking and respecting them. Influence built on sincerity lasts. Influence built on manipulation crumbles quickly.